Okay, friends, I'm back. You may notice there's been a few changes to the programming lineup here, if you will, and mainly what I did was I just changed the title of the Rocco DeLeo show to the Real Freedom Show. And if you listen to the show at all, if you listen to any previous episodes, I think you get the reason, I guess, of why I changed that name. I don't want to go too much into it, but I just figure if somebody doesn't know who I am and they happen to come across the title of it, they'll have a basic idea of what the show's about, and I hope they will give it a listen and make some comments and maybe learn something and maybe help me learn something. But a couple changes, I guess, if you will, subtle changes to the show that I'm going to share with you right now. Is one is for the most part, the way I've been doing the show is I do the show after studying my notes, and I'm still working on this book here, The Road to Serfdom. Although I might be switching books here soon because well, there's so much more. I can't seem to get past even a couple pages in this book without writing 2,000 words. So I'm going to continue to do some episodes like that, but I'm also trying to develop my writing skill, writing skill more from a teaching perspective. I think I've written a lot of opinion in the past. So one of the things that this whole project, this whole rockodelio.com website and my podcast, it's really just helping me think, helping me develop my skills, helping me develop my ideas. So one of the things I want to do is start writing more blog posts at rockodelio.com and then talking more from that. And that's what I'm going to do today. Today's going to be kind of short, but it's a different challenge. It's a different thing for me to do. But I feel like ultimately, if I could develop that skill a little bit better, I can make my points and my arguments and my quote unquote teaching a little more effective because I can get a little deeper rather than trying to think of stuff on the fly. If that makes any sense. So without further ado, I want to talk about a post that I wrote, and I don't put dates on my post because I don't know. I just don't put. Somebody told me a long time ago, don't put dates on your post, and people, if it's too old, people won't read it. So okay, whatever. But I wrote a post. It's called "You Think They Are Wrong, and They Think You Are Evil," and I'm talking about discourse in America, and to a very small extent, I have been the brunt of people just attacking me for stuff that I wrote that they didn't even read, and it shut me down for a while. It also I guess in a sense it kind of kept me honest, but the particular art, and I don't want to go too much into it, but the particular are the specifics of the article where I was just lambasted. I was lambasted for stuff that had nothing to do with what people were saying I was talking about, and for the life of me, I couldn't get people to read. Like, would you just read it? I'm genuinely interested in other people's opinions and other people's thoughts, and I see this in America today. And I watch the news. I'm trying not to watch so much of the news. Even though I'm like hyper aware of this because I talk about it on my podcast, I talk about it with my family so much, I still get sucked into it, and I don't understand it. Why when somebody's talking, somebody's in front of an audience, or somebody's doing something like what I'm doing, and people will just call them names. I'll call them just just terrible things, or what we see a lot nowadays, people will just, I guess it's filibustering them, like college professors. The people will walk into their rooms, or people giving speeches. I think in the article I talk about Ben Shapiro, but it could be really anybody, and they just start talking. They may have a chant, they may have some witty thing to say, and they'll just repeat it over and over, basically saying, you know what, I don't want you to talk. You're not. Your opinion doesn't matter, and I'm just standing here and until you decide you're not going to talk, and that scares the heck out of me. I have a post coming up that it's already recorded and everything. I just need to put it on here about free speech and stuff too. It's not always about the First Amendment, but man, so much good stuff comes out of listening to people talk. So, so going back to this, the title of this blog post, I for the longest time I don't understand what is it about people. Why do they just shut other people down? And I heard Charles Krauthammer say this. I don't know if he was the original or if he's the only guy that said this, and he just recently passed away as well. But he's a conservative. He was a conservative columnist and a pretty good one. And he said, "Here's the thing," and he's talking as a Republican or as a conservative, I guess. And he says, "Here's the thing we're dealing with. We think those of us on the right, those of us who are conservative or whatever, think that people on the left are wrong, but the people on the left think that we are evil." And I'm not the I don't want to make sort of a blanket statement because I don't want to get into the weeds on all this and all the nuances of somebody from the left saying I don't think you're evil, and then all of a sudden so I'm not going to put all my eggs in that basket. But what I do see, or what I do get out of that statement, and I think I allude to in my blog post, is that perspective changes a lot when you can have this understanding of this perspective and sort of just thinking out loud here of obviously I come from the political right, small government. I don't want to argue the issues, like the policy issues. I don't want to argue whether Donald Trump is this or that, or whether Hillary Clinton is. I don't want to argue that. There's plenty of people out there who are doing it, and it's ugly. And I think people who want to see America fail, and I'm not saying who it is, right? Because there are people on every side, and there are people outside the country, and I believe the devil wants America to fail because America is a special place, and there's room in America for people on the right and people on the left. And we need both people. Because if you have just so many people on the right, like I'm on the right and I'm just thinking about economics and business and everything, and no one's saving the trees. Well, I want somebody to save the trees. I just don't want to have to spend all my time thinking about saving the trees. I'm going to delegate that to somebody else. But I don't want the whole purpose of the world, the whole purpose of our government and our society to save the trees. There's a balance to it all, right? But when you think I'm evil, if you're on the tree hugger, right? If you're on the other side and your number one issue is saving the trees, and no matter what I say, you just have an idea of who I am, because my number one idea is not saving the trees, so I must hate trees and I must be evil. If you knew me, I love the trees and I love being out in the wilderness and all that. It's just not my number one thing, although it's pretty close. Let me tell you, this podcast may not talk a lot about it, but it's I love it. I love it. So I digress again. But the point is, the enemies, people that want to see America fail, know that for the most part, there's not going to be some giant war that we're going to lose, that we're not going to be invaded by an army. We are going to tear ourselves, if we're going to fail, we are going to tear ourselves apart from within. And I think people see that. People that are not just so caught up in the you're evil and you're stupid, you're this, you're that. Like, wait a minute. What are the arguments? What's the content of the arguments? What is it that we want? And the guise of this article I wrote really came from years ago. I have a bachelor's degree in political science, and I think everything I understand about political science has nothing to do with what I learned in that class about 20, or in that degree program 20 something years ago. It's just from reading books and reading old books based in principle, books that have nothing to do with the time we're in, like with the specifics, but it's the ground level principles of our government, of our society, of human relations and stuff like that. We could talk about small government versus, or I should say, I would rather talk about small government versus someone else's idea of large government or government control. And if you read any of my stuff, I talk a lot about socialism or central planning out of this book I'm reading, The Road to Serfdom. I'd much rather talk about that and learn the principles myself, so I could talk to people about, like, hey, you know what? I see this. I see what people want, and this is what happens if you get what you want, and the consequences and stuff like that, rather than going, oh, well, Trump's policy on X, Y, and Z is is good because of this, and then just hear a bunch of people say, "Oh, I hate women because I like Donald Trump," or it's like that doesn't have anything to do. It doesn't have anything to do with what I want to talk about, and that, of course, is what the show and what my writing is about. Is like, let's get down to the principles. Like, why do you vote Republican? Why do you vote Democrat? Why is it that you tend to agree with people who like smaller government ideas? Or why is it that you tend to trust government? That you tend to think that the government's a better solution than the individual? Why? Why? That's and for me, I believe in small government. I believe the individual is better suited. But who the heck am I? In my opinion, doesn't matter at all. I want to know the why. I want to articulate it to my kids. I want to show through people smarter than me, through these writings like The Road to Serfdom and other really good books like this, right? And reading the Constitution and understanding what it means when you give this right up or when you take this right, or anarchy versus total totalitarian control, all this stuff. That is what I want to talk about. But when we hear people that are genuinely like I believe I'm genuinely, I know because I'm inside my head. I'm genuinely intellectually curious about developing and strengthening my argument about small government. But I am not genuinely and intellectually curious about proving my argument to be right. Because if I'm not right, I don't want to be right. If there's something better, if there's an idea, if somebody could show me something better or teach me about their idea, or maybe there's something in the middle that can help me understand my position, help me understand someone else's position, because at the end of the day, if everybody on the political right gets their way and we have the society and we've got to get rid of half the people, nobody wants that, and I don't think people on the left want the same thing either. I want to have conversations. I want to learn from people who have different opinions. And let me see, there's 7 billion people in this world? I think there's 7 billion different opinions. Nobody believes exactly the same things. I want to learn, and I want to hear from people, and I want people to be open-minded. That doesn't mean that we just assume everybody who disagrees with us is evil. So I'm kind of roundabout there, right? You think they are wrong. They think you are evil. So how do we deal with people who just think we're evil? And I talk about this a little bit. You have to pick and choose your battles. And some people want to go out there and argue the policy stuff in every little thing. I may find myself getting caught up in this at some point in some of my posts. I don't know. I'm going to try to avoid this, because then I think, again, I'm not that good at that. So I think I'm going to get lost in the weeds and people are going to forget about the principles. But understanding the why, having your own principles, whether you agree with me or not, having foundational principles. So whenever there's a situation, because situations come and go, presidents come and go, Congresses come and go, even issues really come and go. But principles should stay the same. You have foundational principles. You decide, I want to live a life like this. I want to have a society like this, and I believe this is the best way for people to live and grow and learn and love each other. So when a situation comes up, you think, I'm not sure. So in the past, you go, I'm not sure what to believe. Let's see. The guy on the left side of the screen on Fox News is a Republican, so I must agree with him. Or I'm a Democrat, so the guy on CNN. I'm making general statements here, so forgive me. I must agree with him. How about going, I believe in principles of small government and individual control over stuff. And, even though you're a Republican, you're making claims that you want more government regulations or the government should have their hand, blah, 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 right? I don't know that I agree with that. And then you question people. It's like, well, small government this and that. And this is more of what I want. I don't want to get too far in the weeds on specifics here, but this is where I want to go. I want to be able to see, like, somebody, I don't care what label they have, but I want to say, okay, here's my principles, and here's the principles that your party says you believe in. But here's what you're doing, this specific incidents, and it doesn't quite jive with the principles that you say you believe. So help me understand. And maybe they go, well, yeah, but it does fit in here or whatever. Oh my goodness, we just had discourse. That I think is something. It's a beautiful thing. I think it's something that could really change, bring more greatness back to America in the discussion. We have such great technology that I'm sitting here in my office, it just in a random day that I could put this out there, and someone on the other side of the planet can hear me, hear my argument or hear my discussion and comment back to me in real time. That's pretty cool. But instead, we're using it to scream at each other and go, "I don't want to hear you. I don't want to listen to you because you're evil. You're a jerk." How do we have all the answers? Because the only time you really, I'm not even sure you would do this, but if you had all the answers, if like God just showed up and said, you know what, everything you believe is exactly everything, then you go, okay, at that point you go, I don't need to hear anything anybody says, because God told me I have all the answers. But I don't think that's happened to anybody, not yet. So why not listen to people? So let's see, where anything pithy I said, you can't see on the screen here, but I'm looking at my iPad on my blog post. I think I understand this concept. What fuels these people? I disagree, but I do understand. It both saddens me and scares me to see this tactic, this idea spreading. Yeah, the fact that so many people are either so arrogant as to believe they have all the answers, or so ignorant as to think. I tend to think there's more of this, as to believe that those they disagree with are either. So you're either, so in essence, I'm saying here, if you're one of these people that just doesn't want to hear anything, you're either arrogant and you think you've got it all figured out, or you're so ignorant, which again I think is what a lot of these people fall in, is they just don't know, and they really believe that these people that disagree with them are evil, and they don't have the mental capacity, they don't have the energy, they don't have the time, or they're just lazy and they don't want to listen and they don't want to learn. It's my way or the highway. So these people, and I'll start wrapping it up here. I said it was going to be short, and here I go. I'm probably going to go long here. But how do we deal with these people? I'll put a link on this, but I did do a post for the Real Dad show called Arguing with Idiots. And it comes from Proverbs 9. It really, the gist of it is pick your battles. Sometimes it's just, you don't need to engage with people, because people can yell and scream, especially online, right? But people can yell and scream at you and call you all these names. And I went through this, and it doesn't make you that. It doesn't make you, they call you racist, they call you a bigot, they call you a sexist, they could call you stupid, they could call you evil. And just because they're saying it doesn't make you that. So the first thing is to ask yourself, do I need to engage with these people? And listen, this isn't my job. I do this. I've explained why I do this, but I do this so I could go back and understand my thought process, and I could develop my thought process. It doesn't matter to me ultimately if anybody else listens to this. So this is for me, and maybe for my kids, to develop, to see. It gives me an excuse to nerd out, because I love to nerd out on this stuff. So I don't need to engage in this. You just have to decide yourself, because of your job or your role or whatever. Do you have to engage? If the answer is no, then don't engage. Who cares? Someone that angry is not going to change their mind, and you get caught up in their pity argument. Their pity. That sounds right. Petty. Their petty argument. You're going to lose track, which is what they want, or the people that sent them what they want. They want the chaos. They don't want you to talk about the real issues. They're never going to change their mind, so who cares? That's the first thing. And for me, I had to calm down. I had to take a step back, and I had to question, okay, do I really believe what I'm saying? And am I articulating this correctly? And I'm back. I'm here. I'm talking. So of course I believe in this stuff. And just making sure you're articulating a good message, and finding people you trust and having them look over or listen or whatever and say, hey, does this make sense? Am I saying what I'm wanting to say? And those most people only have a few people in their lives that have the intellectual capacity and also the honesty and the love and the caring for people to really be able to say, yeah, you know what, I think you do, or even though I disagree with you, here's what I'm hearing you say, and is that what you are trying to say? Okay, yes, that's what I'm trying to say. Now let's start there. So really two things there. One is 90% of it is just don't engage. If you don't need to engage, if you don't have to engage, don't. And go to people that you do need to engage with, and people who care about you, and have them help you if you're questioning. Am I coming off like this? I don't mean to come off like that. And I did that, and I got the answers that I thought I was going to get, but and I got some challenges as well from people who know that you're not whatever these people say you are. So I've gone kind of long again here. So again, I've changed the name of the show to Real Freedom. Today it was a little more of a rant, if you will, sort of a why, and it just really ultimately wanting you to change your perspective. Who you don't have to win every argument, because if they think you're evil and you're not evil, there's really no point in arguing with these people. So take a look at roccodilio.com if you want to read my blog. Go to the Real Freedom Show. You have to put in the Real Freedom Show because freedom comes up in a lot of places on iTunes, or I use Downcast. If you want to follow my podcast, I'm going to try to do a few podcasts a month, and they're going to be more in depth and more sort of a teaching on principles. So with that, I'm going to thank you for listening and wish you a nice afternoon.